Smash! Space Marines.
Hey, today I'm fulfilling a poll suggestion from many moons ago. Sorry about that. I had a lot of trouble motivating myself to enjoy painting the Raptors, and once I actually did it, I really enjoyed it. But as you can probably guess from the title, we won't just be painting the Raptors. We're also going to be adding in additional methods to really drive home the army scheme as well as their overall aesthetic. The Raptors are an army that take the Raven Guard's sneaky beaky aspect to the next level. And because of how simplistic their color scheme is, it allows us to do much more time-consuming methods that'll allow us to really make these guys shine. The one in particular we'll be doing today is making ghillie suits. But before we get into it, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you like what you see. And if you really dig the video, consider becoming a channel member. For just $3 or $5 a month, it can really help this channel thrive. It allows me to make better videos and more videos overall. You'll get to see new videos early and get access to members' exclusive content. Huge thank you to my channel members. You guys are awesome. But enough about that, let's take a look at the paints we'll be using. I just want to disclose that for both miniatures in this video, I'm doing the exact same color scheme. Most of the painting, however, was filmed on the Reaver. But before we actually get to painting, we're first going to want to build our Marine. This is a Marine I had built previously on a stream, one that was rather roughly stripped of its paint, but that's okay. The ghillie suit will ultimately cover up the entirety of the backpack and roughly a third of the entire miniature. The first thing we're going to do is cut some wax paper off this Army Painter's Tough sheet. The slice I'm making here is the one I used for the Reaver, but the one that we'll be building here, I actually cut open a little hole in the very top just so I could fit it around the backpack. We'll then be adding on PVA glue and a good amount of water. We're essentially paper macheing this onto the Marine. You're going to want to move these portions of the cape into place using a hobby knife, but overall don't worry too much about tears or battle damage on this sheet. This is basically just a body for our terrain to adhere to. And if you wish, you don't even really need to do this if you're using any caped miniatures to begin with. The wax is purely to make a cape shape, and that's about it. Once the first portion of the cape is adhered, or at least drying, we'll want to slice another purely to put over the power pack. As you can see, as I'm adhering this on, there's a good portion of it just hanging off of the power pack. And that's totally fine, we don't need to fill in this negative space. In fact, this is actually preferable. This allows a lot more room for the terrain to hang off of. Next, we'll be applying on the texture, and for this I'm using cotton gauze. I'll be slicing off relatively random portions of the gauze. We don't want it to be too big, but I don't really like the overall super thin look, mostly because I'm kind of a lazy bones. Plus, almost all of this will be covered up. It's really up to you on how much detail you want to put in, but I definitely think this will suffice. We'll then coat the entirety of the wax using a little bit of PVA, and we'll be sticking these little portions on. Think of it like adding scales. Once you've applied your first layer, you'll be adding in another. If you need to snip any portions that are dangling, that's totally fine. I strongly suggest utilizing your hobby knife to push pieces into place as well. It takes time to really apply all of this, and using more glue than you think isn't exactly a bad idea. So long as you don't spill it onto the main portion of the Marine where the power armor is visible, you can get away with liberally applying it. And as kind of a little bonus to this method, you'll be spending a good portion of time crafting the suit, but you only really need to paint a good 2/3 of the Marine. If you're in a rush to get a kill team done, hell, this is perfect. Once you've applied all your gauze strips, it's then time to make some texture. For this, I decided to use some tea herbs. As much as I love me some Twinings, I'm not much of a Lady Grey fan, I'm more of an Earl Grey enjoyer. This stuff will provide a great earth texture to the cloth, and you can easily apply this for basing purposes. To apply this onto the ghillie suit, I sprayed the suit using some terrain glue. In reality, this isn't terrain glue, I just mixed some PVA with some water. Worked pretty damn well. We'll then sprinkle this onto our Marine, and I also mixed in just a little bit of random Army Painter static grass as well. This is mostly just to fill in any gaps. We're going to be painting over this regardless, so it doesn't really matter in terms of color. After doing so, I'm adding in one final detail. I'll be adding in some jungle vines from Army Painter, and for this I actually ended up using a little bit of super glue instead. It allowed me to not only apply this easier, but it also added a little bit more structural density to the cape. And the vines themselves. They're very crumbly, so adding in a little bit of harder texture really makes it so they won't break off as easy. And with that, the cape is complete. We can now move on to the painting of the Marine. We'll be painting the cape after the main power armor, so if you want to skip ahead, be my guest. Once I zenithal prime my Marines, I'd base coat them using 2 coats of Militarum Green. The reason I'm doing 2 coats is I want a really strong opaque olive green. Once the drab was completely opaque, I dry brush on some Skarsnik green as well as a little bit of metallic silver to give a beaten down look to the armor right off the bat. We'll be applying more highlights later on, but if you're in a hurry, you can just do this. It'll look just fine. For all the metallic bits, including the knife, gun, tubes, and trim, I'm using dark silver. Like most of my Marine painting tutorials, I won't go into much detail on painting the actual weapons. I'll more than likely save that for a separate video later down the line. On all the leather, I applied a good amount of dark ivory. I'm essentially base coating the entirety of the leather bits using this color. I probably should have used a darker color and then highlighted using dark ivory, but I think this method works fine as is. The results are good, I just feel like I could have done this a little bit faster. I have a much more in-depth tutorial on painting leather, well, technically it's a short, but for this, I used hardened leather from the Army Painter. We'll be doing more for the leather bits later on, however, so don't worry if you're a detail freak like me. Next for the helmet, I applied a little bit of Imperial Fist to the Mohawk. I don't know the squad markings all too well for the Raptors, but this addition of yellow is something that really draws me to the overall chapter in terms of their color scheme, so I'm just applying it here on one portion. Next on the leather, I applied some highlights using dark ivory over the leather itself, using my typical scratchy method, and I'd recoat the entirety using a little bit of snakebite leather. This color is a little bit darker than hardened leather, and you could use more, but I just think toning it down looks better in my opinion. At the end of the day, if you want to be quick, I'd go for just snakebite leather. Next, we're going to wash the entirety of the Mini using a mix of sepia and black ink from Vallejo. This is watered down slightly. I'd suggest adding in your decals first before doing this, hence why I kind of scrub the pauldron here. Doing the wash over the decal and the Mini at the same time will make them look more tied together. You could technically use any kind of paints that you want for this, Agrex Earthshade and a little bit of Nuln Oil, some Mud Wash and Oblivion Black Wash. I just like how the inks look. After our wash has dried, I began cleaning up the raised edges of the metallics using more dark silver. We'll then move on to the highlighting, and for this I used a little bit of Skarsnik green again. I'm not really doing a mid-tone as I really do want to save on time, and I think doing a bold color like this really drives the color scheme home to begin with. Plus, with how scratchy this is, it really sells the gruff, sneaky nature of this chapter. Like I stated previously, if you just want to do the dry brush, that's just fine, but as far as highlighting goes, I think this is relatively easy. Force yourself to give it a try. To highlight our metallics, I'm using some metallic silver from Vallejo Game Color. This is also very bold and I'm using it sparingly. Really makes the miniature stand out, and if you wish you can use it to add in scratches or paint chipping. For the Reaver's abdomen, I decided to add in some Black Legion. Personally, I feel like for Reavers, the abdomen looks really weird when it's entirely metallic. I feel like with their role in combat, their armor should look more flexible. So with this, I'm making it look like kind of a pseudo-silicone metallic. For any chunkier highlights and scratches, I'm using some dryad bark mixed with a touch of black. Any black paint will do, this just makes the scratches pop out more. For the yellow on the helmet, I highlighted it using a little bit of flat yellow from Vallejo Model Color. The yellow and the green look really cool on these guys. For the Marine's eyes, I added in some dark ivory. White would probably be a better application here, but initially I was planning on giving them red eyes as opposed to the canonical blue eyes. I then decided to go with a more lore-accurate route by applying a little bit of High Lord blue. Personally, I feel like a warmer color would be better suited. Something akin to a blood orange of sorts, but I can't say the blue doesn't make them stand out. It definitely makes them look more unique. And as one final portion of the armor, I'm kinda recess shading a little mix of Doombull brown mixed with a touch of Jokero orange. This will add in some cheap and effective weathering. I'd be sparing with it, here I'm kinda adding in a little bit more than I need to, but I watered it down just to make it look a little bit more natural. I think this kinda look is really good for this kinda chapter, especially in Marines that don't have any yellow to really make them pop out more. This is a great method of adding in just a little bit more visual interest to the overall army. And with that, our armor is complete. But we're going to move on to the ghillie suit now. We'll start by base coating the ghillie suit using some Dark Angel's green. And while that's still dry, we'll be adding in some Beastly Brown from Vallejo Game Color. I'm speckling this in kind of cheap, very splattery patterns. Mixing the colors together while they're wet really allows for a much more natural look. But once it's dried, I applied a spongy dry brushing of light green mixed with a touch of flat yellow. If you push off some of the foliage, that's okay. I did ultimately decide to switch dry brushes as the Army Painter brush was a little too forceful on the miniature, so using this more traditional dry brush actually works a little bit better. Also, if you want, you can load up the brush using a little bit more paint than usual. There is such thing as too much, but because of how much texture is on the ghillie suit, there's a lot of areas for the paint to catch on to. And with that, you'll have some spectacularly stealthy Marines. I feel silly for how long I procrastinated on painting them, but better late than never, because man, these guys are a blast to paint. Also, if you're curious on how I painted the face camo on the Reaver, I actually painted this exact melon in my flesh painting tutorial. I strongly suggest you check it out if you want to add in just a little bit more tactical flair to your Raptors. But hey, I hope you found this entertaining, and I really hope you found it helpful. If you did, I'd greatly appreciate it if you left a like, comment, and subscribed, maybe shared it with a friend. It helps a lot, helps the channel grow, and it gives me more incentive to make more videos like this for other chapters. My Discord actually has an entire section dedicated to video suggestions, so if you have ideas for both Loyalist and Chaos Space Marines, I'm more than willing to hear it out. I actually have a good mix in the ideas tank right now, so keep your eyes open for more videos like this. But I'm flapping my beak way too much for one video, so remember to mishmash, kit bash, and paint some fantastic miniatures. And you're gonna, I promise. See ya!